Now, those of you that don't know me, if you haven't heard me on the radio or if you haven't seen me at Lifestyles Unlimited before, my name is Chris Robinson. I'm a mentor, investor, speaker, radio host. I've been around the business for, I'd say probably off and on for 8, 9, 10 years. Some of you heard me talk about earlier, I used to come to all the meetings that were here at Aereo. I used to go to DFW Rain, all the older groups that were there back at the time when I first moved here about 7 years ago. And when I first moved here into Dallas, I went out and got licensed because I had come from Illinois and I didn't know anything about the market. I had done some single-family rehab flips up there when that was the chic thing to do, back when flips were really cool. Now we, of course, recommend that you go out there and you buy properties and you hold them for a longer period of time in order to go out there and cash flow. But when I moved here, I thought, okay, I'll get my license and I'll learn all about real estate here in the area. And once I got my license, I started working as a realtor and I got all caught up in that. And I wasn't buying any more properties, and I was just off and running and just doing the realtor thing. And by the way, anybody that's a realtor in the room, if you're out there making a living that way, I've got a lot of respect for you because that is a tough, tough gig. I just couldn't make it. I didn't have the sales gene or something. I just couldn't make it happen. So anyway, it's a tough gig. Anybody think about getting your license? First of all, I get this question a lot. People ask me, should I get my license? I want to be a real estate investor. Should I get my license? Don't bother. You don't need it. It's actually going to become a liability for you unless you have some other reason to do it. And if you've got some friends, you want to go out and you actually want to be a realtor, you want to actually go out there and help people buy and sell houses, that's fine. But don't get it just because you want to be a real estate investor. You don't need it. All right. Now, again, I've done everything from single-family flips to multifamily rentals. When I moved here to Dallas, I actually had read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which I'm sure most of us have all probably read that book. And he talks about cash flow. And it just seemed to make a lot of sense to me because when I went out there and I was flipping properties, I kept finding out that no matter how many properties you flip or what kind of money you make, it all goes away somewhere. I don't know where it goes, but somehow you end up spending all the money you make in a flip like that. But if you can get some long-term wealth building, build some equity, and get some cash flow coming in, that's more our recipe at Lifestyles. That's more what we shoot for. All right? Now, I came to Lifestyles back in 2008, and I came there as a member. I joined as a member. Then I came on as a realtor. Once I found out more about them, I wanted to work with them. And I was one of the people that used to go out there and help all of our members go out and find their deals. So we've got people that would look for multifamily deals, single-family deals, and everything in between. And I'd go out there and help them do that. Then they asked me to come over to the Lifestyles education and mentoring side. And so that's when I moved over and I started doing this kind of stuff and doing the presentations in our free workshops. And you're also welcome to come out to one of our free workshops too. I teach that. In fact, I had to teach that this morning from 9 to 11 at Lifestyles in Irving, and then I rushed over here to come over here to do this as well. So you guys get signed up at our booth and come out to see one of those workshops as well. Now, our goal, what I'm going to teach you how to do, again, is have deals come to you. Because as I mentioned before in my little introduction at lunch, most people get out there and they want to become real estate investors and they get caught up trying to figure out all the nuts and bolts of it and trying to figure out every way you can go out and possibly source finding properties or finding money and everything else. And we're all about leverage. We're all about going out there and using other people's time, other people's money, and other people's knowledge to do this business. I'm lazy. Anybody that knows me will attest to that. I don't like going out there and busting my butt. I've done that. Back when I first started investing, I was out there swinging the hammer, hanging drywall, doing all that stuff myself, and I realized that I was stepping over $1 to pick up a dime. I was cutting corners in all the wrong places and costing myself money. Now, I'm all about letting other people do the work. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Believe me, I'm war slap out from all the work that I'd done previous in my life. I grew up, my dad was basically a union plumber, and he kind of instilled that work ethic in me. You know, go out there and just bust your hump and then be miserable and come home and self-medicate with TV and booze and everything else, you know, nights and weekends, right? But I'm over all that. I still do the self-medicating sometimes, but I'm over all the hard work part. So I'm done with that. Now, our goal is going to be to go out and find 20 real estate agents that know this business, that are going to be finding the deals for you, and they're going to be out there working night and day. Now, these are people that have dedicated their lives to go out there and do this for us. So why not let them do it, right? We have better things to do with our time. And when you go out there and talk to these people, there's 4 main things they need to know about you. First of all, they have to know who you are. You know, they need to know you by name. They also need to know what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to find some real estate that's going to cash flow. They also need to know that you're credible And this is a very important topic right here because there are a lot of realtors out there that will get calls from investor wannabes that have books, CDs, and tapes, etc. And they'll say, hey, I want to go out there and start buying some properties, and they start walking them around, start driving them around, and they never pull the trigger. And these realtors start to think, okay, investors are time wasters. I'm not going to even jack with them. So we need to teach them we're different, all right? And those of you that are members of Lifestyles, obviously, one of the ways you'll teach you're different is going to be, of course, the fact that you're part of the Lifestyles or you're part of one of these organizations here that's going to teach you how to go out there and buy these properties. All right. The next thing, they need to know that they're going to get paid twice as much to work with you as they would a normal client. And I'll get into that in a second. Now, before I get into working with realtors and how to go out there and leverage their time and get them to find the properties for us, I want to go over some alternative property locating methods first. Now, there are several methods that, in fact, every method on this slide I've done at some point, both as an investor and also as a realtor. The first one, courthouse leads. I tried this. I didn't have a lot of success with it. There are vendors here that can help you go out there and find these different types of properties, but my experience was always that it was kind of a good old boys network. And it was tough to kind of be the inside guy to get the information on going out and buying one of these houses. Perhaps Roddy and those guys can help you guys go out there and have more success at that than I did. Also, what I found out was that when you go to the courthouse steps and you go to buy one of these properties, you really have to know that property pretty well already, because there is no option period. Once you go out there, you've got to put money, cold hard cash, down on the property. You just bought that property. You better hope it is what you thought it was. You better hope the rehab is not more extensive than you thought it was going to be. All right? So, and as I go through these, I want you to think about those concepts of leverage that I'm talking about. Leveraging other people's time, money, and knowledge. And think about whose time, money, and knowledge has to go into all these different techniques. The courthouse leads, obviously, you're going to be spending a lot of time going out there, doing the research, showing up at first Tuesday, or is it first Tuesday of the month? Going out there and doing all that kind of stuff. The next thing is bank lists. These are REO properties. These are real estate owned. Basically what this is a bank went out, they put a loan on a property, the owner or the borrower stopped paying them, so they've now taken the house back. Well, they're not in the business of owning houses, so they don't want to hang on to these things. So they, of course, go out and they find an asset management company that will take these properties, get a realtor hired up. They'll go out there and get these things winterized and listed and sold and all that kind of stuff. It's very tough, again, to get into these REO banks and try to figure out what their REO department is or what properties they have. And even when you go to a bank, and I did this several times, I'd go to a bank and say, I want to talk to somebody about your REO lists. I want to see your REO properties. Most of the time they would tell me, we don't have an REO department. I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I found out later they were actually not lying in many cases. They truly did not know because they would outsource that to an asset management company. So it's really tough to get in and try to find properties that way as well. The only person I know that's ever had any success doing that is one of our mentors in Houston. His name is Jeff Smith. And the only reason he had some success getting into one of these banks and getting a hold of some REO properties is because his wife worked at the bank. And so she was able to get him in to talk to the right people. Okay? But otherwise, it's kind of tough niche to get into. Next, driving for dollars or bird dogging. Probably everybody in this room, if you've ever even looked at a piece of real estate before, you know what this is, right? This is what everybody tells you to do whenever you get a tape or book or CD program, right? And I did a ton of this. I used to go out and drive around looking for properties. Again, you're looking for the overgrown lawns, you're looking for the roof that's collapsed in, the car was upside down with no wheels on it, that kind of thing, right? And when you do find the property, you then have to go out there and try to get a hold of the owner. And that in itself can be quite a struggle. And there's been a couple of these that I've gone out and I've tried to take these down as well. And I found that it's just too much of a headache to go out there and try to get these properties. Because typically, when you do find the owner of the property, they live in California or something, then you got to track them down there, send them emails, phone calls, everything else. Then you find out that it's held in a trust or there's 3 other heirs to the property and you can't get everybody to agree to sell the property to you. A lot of time, all right? And again, we want to leverage other people's time. We want to get our time so we can go out and do things we're passionate about, spend time with family, whatever it is you're into, okay? Flyers, and actually, let me touch on bird dogging. Bird dogging is basically the same thing, driving for dollars, but you're having somebody else do it for you. And what I did is I had a couple of teenage kids that would go out and they would drive around different neighborhoods looking for these properties, because I'd tell them, every time you go to school or go to a buddy's house, drive a different path. Take a different neighborhood, like everybody tells you to do. And if they called me and they gave me a lead on a property and I went out and actually took that property down, then I would pay them a little, pay them a little something, a little spiff. All right? But again, it's a tough way to go. Flyers, door hangers, farming. This is mostly a technique used by realtors. Some investors do this as well. But what you do is you take a geographical area and you inundate that area with your postcards, your flyers, door hangers, everything else, and it's more of a branding technique. And you basically want to get to the point where you've got your calendar with your face and your name and everything else up, on a magnet on their refrigerator, so when they decide to sell their house, they're going to call you. And it takes a ton of money to do this, to put all these different farming, campaigns together, a ton of time. And I actually, when I first started out, I was actually going out and I was the guy hanging them on the doors, because I didn't trust anybody else to do it, because I'd heard all the stories about how you'd pay a company to go do it, and they'd hang 10 of them up, and then the rest of them would end up in the circular bin, right? So again, a lot of time, a lot of money, and I think an absolute stellar return on these, I think, was 1%, was what you would expect. And you typically didn't get that. Direct mail, we all know what this is. We're all on tons of direct mail lists. This is, and you can actually go out and Google direct mail lists, and you can get a ton of them. You can go out there and basically buy information for these people, and it's not so much in a geographical area. You can do it any way you want. You can do it by, how much is their house worth, how much do they make in annual income, how many kids do they have, etc. And you can buy these direct mail lists, and you can blast out information to those as well. Again, you got to pay for it. It's expensive, and most people sort their mail the same way you do. You stand over the trash bin and you sort through your mail, right? So a lot of this stuff never even gets to their eyeballs. So again, to me, it's a waste of money. If you guys have had some success, that's great, but to me, I just never found it to be worthwhile. Display ads and other media. These are things like going out and doing a full-page ad in the Dallas Morning News, or doing maybe an ad in the Green Sheet. Very expensive. These also are kind of a branding technique where it takes multiple times for somebody to see your name, to see your information before they're ever really going to call you, unless you just happen to get lucky and hit somebody that's right in a crisis and they've got to sell their house and they call you right away. All right? But again, expensive, takes a long time to go out there and get any type of result, and again, I don't think it's really worth the effort as far as the money. Next, internet databases. You can go out there and find properties by searching on the internet. Go to any realty site, and they're going to have the ability probably to connect to the MLS. The problem with most of these sites is that they are sometimes maybe a day or two behind the MLS. And if you're looking for the kind of deals that we all want to capture, they usually get snapped up pretty quick. So a day or two is a huge time frame to not have updated data. So the best thing to do is go directly to the source and get this information directly from a realtor and have that information as soon as it hits the database. All right? Now, other investors, this is probably my second favorite way to find properties, because there are a ton of investors, especially at an event like this, that have properties that they may have gone out there, bought them, rehabbed them, moved a tenant into it, and now they're wanting to flip it as a turnkey solution to somebody else that maybe doesn't have a lot of experience. You can walk right into a property that is already cash flowing possibly, and you don't have to do any work. And again, that appeals to me. I don't want to do any work. Now, of course, you're not going to have as much meat on the bone as if you went out and found the property yourself, right? Because the investor that's selling you the deal is going to keep some meat on the bone. They're not going to give you everything. Now, we had a mentor at our office, Brian Upton. He got to the point where he got to 38 single-family properties, and he wanted to get into multifamily, which is kind of our natural progression. We usually move people up into multifamily if they want to go that route. Some people stay single-family. Now, he actually went out there and started selling off some of his properties. And he was selling some of them individually, and some of them he'd sell off in groups, depending on where they were geographically. And he gave people pretty good deals. I mean, there were some great turnkey solutions that were already up and running, cash flowing. They were kicking off money every single month, and he was able to flip these to some of our members and some people outside as well. So again, investors are great ways. There's lots of wholesalers here as well. And again, there are other investors. They're a great way to source properties. Now, be careful though when you go out there and you buy a property from anybody. And Basically what you want to do is you never want to trust anybody to evaluate your own real estate investment deals. You always want to go out there and learn yourself how to do this. Because